Aloha and good morning. Happy Memorial Day. It is the start of yet another week here on the COVID-19 Care Conversation as we bring to you this important conversation brought to you by the Hawaii Executive Collaborative as well as Hawaii Pacific Health. Good morning on this Memorial Day. I'm Ryan Kalei-Suji.
And I'm Yanji Denise. Thank you so much for being with us here this morning. You know, a lot of people are starting to venture out a little bit more. Some restaurants and retail are opening in new ways. And so today we have two very special guests. We're going to be talking to Tina Yamaki from the Retail Merchants Association of Retail Merchants of Hawaii, along with Victor Lim. He owns a number of McDonald's restaurants, and he's also the former chair of the Hawaii Restaurant Association. I know a lot of us are eager to get back and to start shopping and to support these local businesses, but we want to get some more information about the kind of adjustments and adaptations that are being made in a post-COVID world, and also find out about what those retailers and merchants and restaurateurs are dealing with, how they're handling this crisis, because we know foot traffic is down. And it's pretty tough for them out there. So we hope to learn a lot this morning.
Yeah, going to be great to talk to them to sort of hear how the latest changes has sort of impacted the businesses that they work directly with. Again, we are hearing more and more from these city and state leaders of the lifting of these restrictions. So want to get an account of how it's being impacted and how it's impacting those retailers and these food outlets and the things that they're having to go to. So if you have any questions for them, we encourage you to enter them into the comments and also just let us know where you're watching from. We have someone already tuning in from the island of Kauai. And that's one of the great things about this conversation is that we are able to connect directly with you. So we want to encourage all of you to make sure that you enter your questions in. And we actually have Yanji, who's in a different location. She's back on Oahu. So we have a little bit of technical issues because she's readjusting. So Yanji, I'm going to ask if you maybe want to refresh your screen and see what happens there. And but before we begin, before we get to our guests, we also want to talk a little bit more about some of course, we start off by talking about the counts that have happened and giving you an update. And as of noon on Sunday, there were no new cases that were reported. So a total of 643 positive cases so far in the state. No new deaths for the last 2 weeks. So again, those good news continuing to happen. And we continue to see those numbers hold steady for the time being, which has been a great sign and a sign that the business and the economy here in Hawaii can slowly begin to reopen as we keep those numbers low, as we continue to see those types of numbers progress. And at this time, we want to bring in both hang on, we want to bring back in Yanji here. So Yanji's back.
I sincerely apologize. You know, I've been, since we've been doing this since March 25th, and I've been on the island of Hawaii with my mom, and now I'm back on Oahu, and so there are a few technical challenges, but hopefully we can make this work. And yes, Ryan, wonderful to see no new cases on Sunday, 643 positive, no new deaths in the last 2 weeks, and for the fifth time this month, reporting no new cases. So we just love to see those zero numbers. That makes us feel really good. We know that people are working really hard to flatten the curve. Of course, it's been very challenging. All of that comes at an immense cost, especially to people who work in restaurants and retail. And so for more on that, we invite Tina and Victor to join us. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Tina, I want us to open up. What are some of the challenges that they're facing, and how are they adapting now that we are seeing some of these restrictions start to lift?
You know, I think for all retailers, especially the non-essentials that are coming back online, it's getting the store ready. It's making sure that our customers know that it's safe to come in and shop. We are doing a lot more cleaning and prepping. We're doing the 6-foot distancing signs and, kind of like what you've already seen in a lot of the essential stores that are going on. But for our retailers, the hardest part right now is actually them deciding, can they afford to open up? Because it is an added cost now to open, and they've been closed for 2 months and no income coming in, and they haven't been able to pay their lease rents.
Yeah, and the same question, of course, maybe to you, Victor. Some of the things that the retailers are experiencing, are you hearing the same and similar stories on the restaurant side?
Yeah, I think our challenges are very similar to the retailers. The trying to come back, and you definitely need to add more labor in terms of making sure that there are people on the floor, not only to clean, but to also interact with the customer, explaining to them what the new rules of engagement. You also got to make sure that you get that 6 foot social distancing, the partitions where you interact with the customers, making sure that everybody has face masks and gloves and well educated to be able to handle that. And those are all really additional costs, especially if you go and price out hand sanitizers today. You'll be shocked as the price of hand sanitizer, if you can find them, versus what the cost was 2 months ago. Right, Tina?
Oh, yeah. Hand
Well,
sanitizers,
Victor,
mask, any PPE products or personal protection equipment.
Victor, let me ask you, because I know restaurants, many have stayed open, but a lot more folks are cooking at home, and not every restaurant is suited for takeout. What are you hearing in terms of the restaurateurs in Hawaii, in terms of the drop in income level for them? Because, you know, they are essential. Some have stayed open, but what's the bottom line like for them right now?
So the many restaurant people that I've talked to that have converted to a brand new takeout business that they have never done before, they're still down, I will say, anywhere from 50 to 60%. The takeout revenue is good, but it was nowhere near what they need to even cover the expenses. So right now, you know, with the opening dates that we finally got from Honolulu and Maui and Kauai and now Big Island, I think people are having a challenge and say, do I open on June 1st on the Big Island, or do I open June 5th in Honolulu, or do I need to wait a little while because there's incremental costs that they never had before that they have to continue to absorb.
Tina, I want to bring in a question from a viewer who asked an interesting question that may pertain to you folks, and that is, what are the plans to eliminate some of those extensive lines outside the store? I saw yesterday the reports from Ross and the lines of people that were waiting to get into Ross. We also saw some lines in front of some shoe stores over there when Ala Moana opened up. Is that something that you folks talk about as well on the retail side, of how to address maybe the capacity inside of the store and how to manage people leading them into into retail?
You know, I mean, the capacity part is not up to us. That's a state law, right? Or, you know, county government mandate through the orders, either for the mayor or the governor. So we can only allow so many people in the store. Now, if it's only 5 people are allowed in the store and 500 show up, we can't allow all 500. So, you know, of course, you got to stand in line. The lines also look longer also, too, because you have that 6-foot distancing as well. So come prepared a lot of times. We understand the lines are long, it's hot outside, sometimes it's raining, but that's going to be the new norm for a while until these orders get loosened up a little.
Victor, there's a question here from Steve asking, how often will restaurant staff be tested? I wonder, what is the protocol for people who are working in restaurants in terms of, you know, obviously they're encouraged to stay home if they're sick, but how do you keep your staff healthy? And is there any sort of interaction or, you know, discussion between the city and different restaurateurs in terms of how to test employees?
I think the key guidelines that we got from the Department of Health and everybody else is to make sure that if anybody have any kind of sickness, whether it's coughing or they have a temperature or whatever it is, we want you to stay home and go check with your doctor. Some of the restaurants definitely are doing the temperature check of employees when they come in to work, to make sure that, you know, they don't have any fever. If they have coughing and things like that, that they do not work on the floor. We are also making sure, I think the guideline is that, you know, all the employees working in the restaurant is wearing facial masks, so that, you know, as they interact with the customers, that they're not transmitting anything back and forth. So there's a lot of different provisions that we're doing. We're also educating a lot of the staff on the sanitation, the need to wash hands frequently, and all these other guidelines that we have out there.
Yeah. Tina, I want to ask you a question about, just for customers that may be returning to some of these stores, what can they expect? Because we know that, of course, beyond just the challenges of getting into the store and being allowed, there are some new rules in place, like, fitting rooms and other things. What are some of the adjustments that customers can expect when they head into these stores, just policy-wise, and what they're allowed to do and what they're maybe not allowed to do anymore?
Well, right now, everyone has to wear a face mask. And it's, we understand some people are kind of fighting that and they feel it's their personal right. Well, it's not about you. It's about the safety of not only our employees, but our kapuna, our children, and the other people. So please wear a face mask. If not, you may be asked to leave. We've seen that right now you can't go in fitting rooms and dressing rooms. So a lot of people buy stuff, they try it on at home and they return it. Those clothes and things will probably not be back out on the floor between 24 to 72 hours, just to be sure. We're seeing different changes too in the way people are shopping. They're list shopping now. They're going in with only buying what they need. It's no longer so much impulse buying. It's I'm going in for a pair of shorts, t-shirts, slippers, and they're out again. We also realize that there are a lot of people who are still on unemployment or whose PPP salaries might be ending next month and they may be going on to unemployment. So everyone's a little bit cautious on how they're spending their money right now as well.
Tina, I wonder, given those kinds of restrictions, people watching their wallet and also maybe not doing the impulse buying, not browsing and then picking up a little extra something here and there, how many retailers, and I know you represent such a broad spectrum, so it's probably hard to say, but I mean, how many retailers can survive this kind of slowdown?
That's the $3 million question everyone is asking. We're so dependent on tourism, and until the quarantines are lifted and there's testing or something that we can bring the tourists back, we're going to see a slowdown in the retail shops opening. A lot of them are dependent on the visitors to come in and shop in their stores. So right now, because there are no visitors in the resort areas or those that are really dependent on them, you don't see them open right now. Some companies that have multiple stores may be opening like in the larger shopping centers where local people shop, but they're not where the tourists really are. And they're not kind of looking at, what is feasible to open right now. So we're seeing that a lot too. And also too, a lot of people are employed by the visitor industry. So if they're not getting paid or their pay is being reduced, they don't have that extra income to really spend on things. And it's kind of like the story of the $20 bill. The visitor comes to Hawaii, goes to the hotel, pays the front desk. The hotel pays the front desk the salary. The front desk person goes and buys a plate lunch. The lunch wagon guy goes to the local farmer to buy the produce. The local farmer, pays the delivery guy to deliver his vegetables to the grocery store kind of thing. And maybe the delivery guy goes and he buys shoes for his child. But if, somewhere in that line it's broken, there's not the money going through. So we're seeing a lot less spending.
Victor, we know that you, of course, own some of the McDonald's franchises here in the state. How directly have you been impacted with those McDonald's? Because we know that you have been allowed to sort of stay in business in some of these fast food with the drive-through options, but some of those restaurants also, I imagine, are taking a hit, even though they were allowed to stay open during this time.
Give an example. I have 5 restaurants, 3 in the Windward side that have drive-throughs from Waimanalo and Chenelik and Kailua. But then my downtown stores, because of the stay down, the office community is like a ghost town because most people are told to work from home. So my business is down about 50% right here in downtown. But then I also have a store on the Discovery Bay location, which is right at the mouth of Waikiki. We are surrounded by hotels and stuff like that. We continue to stay open to serve the community, but we're down there. Our business is down over 80% in the Waikiki area. So
Wow.
it's no matter what you do, you're gonna bleed. It's a matter of how much you're gonna bleed. But we try to figure a way that we are doing a community service so that at least there's a place for people to be able to eat affordably.
What are you hearing from your colleagues? Sort of similar question that I just asked Tina in terms of how many restaurants will be able to survive the slowdown.
One of the big names that you saw was Liki Liki Drive-In. That's all in the business in Hawaii for over close to 70 years. That about 3 weeks ago announced that they're shutting down. There's a lot of mom and pops that I really do not think that they're going to survive. Last night I was watching the news, and then there's a gentleman in the North Shore area that have 2 restaurants. He is really debating because unless tourists come back, he's just not going to be able to sustain. And his big debate is whether he shut it down completely. He cannot sell his restaurants because nobody is buying it today. So I mean, there a lot of business people, whether you are restaurants or retail, are facing the same life or death dilemma.
Tina, I want to sort of ask you the question of one of the biggest expenses in keeping a retail or restaurant, for that matter, open is just the overall rent that some of these businesses are having to pay. Have you heard anything from some of the retailers that you work with in terms of the relationships with their landlords and getting any sort of pushback on rental agreements and rental payments? Because we know that's a large part of what they have to pay and their monthly expenses. And if they have no customers coming in, how are they expected to pay this monthly rent?
Yeah, that is the big question right now. So for the last 2 months, a lot of them haven't been able to pay their lease rent, and now we're going on the 3rd month again. They have been trying and contacting their landlords. What we're finding out too is there are some local landlords here in Hawaii that have been working with their tenants and kind of finessing their lease rents and their agreements. We're hearing where other ones have already gotten 2nd and 3rd notices on non-payment of lease rents. So it's a little bit all over. It's unfortunate that some people just are not willing to work with some of the our tenants and their tenants, but we also understand that the landowner has to pay their mortgage to the bank. So it's not, if they're not getting any lease rent in, they can't pay the bank either. So we get that. We have heard that there is a couple of programs out there right now to look at doing some lease rent relief for landowners, where they would get some money and they would kind of spread it amongst their tenants, whether it's a percentage or something. I think there's also a misconception about what lease rent is in Hawaii. It's a lot more than what your home mortgage is. Sometimes it's 10 times, sometimes it's 100 times more than what you would normally pay for your rent or your mortgage at home. So it is the largest monthly expense.
Victor, I'm seeing some questions come in here about the health of customers and how you guys are tracking that. Bonita Brazier has a question. Are there any rules for requiring sit-down restaurants to save reservation information for the purpose of potential contact tracing? I've seen that in other municipalities where they've required reservations so that if someone does fall ill, they can then contact all the people for the places that they may have, sat down and had a meal. What are you hearing about that? Is that something that's in the works?
In Hawaii, that tracking the customer information is not required. However, they do recommend that customers make reservations ahead of time so that they do not congregate in big groups. We are making sure that customers, like the retail shop, keep their masks on until they're ready to sit down to eat. So we are taking a lot of different precautions, but we're not officially tracking every customer that come in to eat.
That's great. And I also want to ask you the question, Victor, about some of the same question that we posed to Tina about the the rental side and the payments that are happening there. What are you hearing on your end from the restaurant side?
You know that interesting thing? It's about half and half. Many of the local landlords are usually very, very good and understand the situation, and they have been very progressive in terms of offering the tenants ability to have a deferred rent or reduced rent. But many of the bigger landlords, especially the ones from the mainland, are the ones that many of the places have a hard time getting any kind of rent abatement.
Right. We have a
this is a live TV.
I sincerely apologize. There's a princess in our midst, and I really apologize for that. Kaya, you need to go. Thank you. Let's, I'm sorry.
Working from home is the
This
new
is
reality.
the new normal of working from home. And when you live with,
And I guess she has to go take care of at this time. We,
We can relate to that.
yeah.
My dog has photobombs, so yes.
So it's the world that we live in now. So maybe some final thoughts here from each of you. Tina, I'll start with you. What are you hoping, sort of in terms of support, maybe from what maybe you're advocating for from local and state government, of ways that they can support retailers, and maybe what your message is to those who are watching who are out there and are thinking about potentially supporting these local businesses? What would your message be to the community?
My message would be twofold. Number one is to those elected officials who have decision-making powers is we need to find some type of relief from lease rent. That is the biggest thing that is holding a lot of businesses back from reopening or even thinking about reopening. Some that are open may even be closing their doors again. They just can't afford it. The cost is just going up, and so is their debt. As far as for the people of Hawaii, it's, go and shop in your in the retail stores locally, support local businesses. That's the ones that are supporting the jobs of your friends, family, neighbors. When you order online, a lot of times you're not supporting Hawaii businesses. And we want to keep Hawaii businesses strong so we can get that unemployment rate down again and get everybody back working.
Yeah, and Victor, maybe the same question to you to sort of wrap things up.
Yeah, like I'd say, please continue to support your local businesses. It's very, very important. We are trying to survive to make sure that our economy continues to move as we open up our interstate commerce. I know the out-of-state commerce is probably going to take us a while, but please support your local businesses. And another big thing that's very important that we were talking about earlier, many of the businesses have applied for PPP loans, and the restrictions on how the money can be used and the timeline to be used has been very, very challenging for many of the businesses to really tap the money carefully to be able to use it so that they can survive these tough times. And the good news is that I understand that this week, on Wednesday, the House of Representatives in Congress is going to be doing a PPP fix that's there. They're going to be offering that. I hope our elected delegation will support. And then the Senate is also working on a similar thing on Thursday. So please, we need those fixes so that we can afford to use the money to pay the rent, to pay our people, and to keep our people employed.
Well, Victor Lim and Tina Yamaki, thank you so much for taking time on this Memorial Day to join us and really providing some very insightful, I think, comments on what some of your friends and colleagues there in both industries are experiencing on the ground. So we thank you very much for joining us, and we certainly would love to hear from you maybe again in a month or so to see how things have changed. We'll definitely be in touch, but thank you again for joining us.
Mahalo for having us.
Aloha.
Thank you.
thank you. Sorry again about that interruption, but very interesting to hear from Tina and from Victor about what the retailers are facing. And I think it is so important for all of us to remember that she's right. When we order online, we don't necessarily support the businesses that need it the most right now. So as much as we can, try to buy local and support folks. There's so many great programs out there where you can, buy directly from farmers. And now as retailers are starting to open up, we need to do as much as we can to support those businesses. Of course, keeping in mind that there are so many challenges for everyone at home, and we see that in the unemployment numbers. And on that point, tomorrow, Scott Murakami from the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations will be joining us yet again. We know that a lot of you have questions about unemployment benefits, specifically about the PUA program, but others who are just starting to file for the first time might have some questions. So please do join us tomorrow at 10:30 for that.
That's why I'm looking forward again to that conversation with Director Murakami. In other news that we quickly want to highlight, just to kind of give a recap of some of the things that are happening or have been announced. Of course, visitor arrivals are continuing to go up, and officials expected that over the Memorial Day weekend, the number of visitors arriving to Hawaii increased on Saturday to the highest amount since the state's mandatory quarantine for air travelers took effect in March. The HTA reported on Sunday that 384 visitors arrived on Saturday. That surpassed the 363 visitors that arrived on Thursday. So those numbers continuing to grow. over time. And the challenge certainly continues to be how the state manages those number of visitors that continue to come to Hawaii while keeping them into that 14-day mandatory quarantine. We're going to be speaking to Lieutenant Governor Josh Green later this week as well. He has been someone that has been a loud voice in sort of the way in which Hawaii should be opening. And we want to talk to him a little bit more about what realistically looks like will be happening as we see more tourists begin to come to Hawaii, as restrictions sort of let up, not only here locally, but we're seeing it throughout the nation as more and more businesses and people get back to life as normal. So we expect to see some of those visitors returning. It's a difficult balance to figure out how we open this economy and welcome tourists back in. And we're looking forward to hearing from the Lieutenant Governor then.
Yeah, it's interesting because we do see a number of pretty high profile arrests, probably about a dozen so far since this quarantine began. But if you compare the number of arrests to the number of visitors, I mean, obviously not all those visitors are violating the quarantine, but it's hard to imagine that they're all staying inside for the full 14 days. So how do we make sure that we protect the residents here who have sacrificed so much while at the same time not building a fortress around Hawaii, because we do want to welcome these folks back at some point. We do need that part of our economy to stand back up. So it'll be interesting, definitely, to hear from Lieutenant Governor Josh Green about that. Also want to say some congratulations to all of the Hawaii graduates who are celebrating the milestones right now in new ways. There were a number of commencement ceremonies over the weekend, and we saw, drive-through graduations, or Roosevelt High School, for instance, emptied the whole auditorium and the kids could go in there one at a time. So we're seeing a lot of adaptations, but the celebrations still have the same spirit. It is wonderful to see all of these graduates who have worked so hard get to be recognized. And I know, Ryan, you had some personal experience taking a look at the Kamehameha School's graduation yesterday, and that looked like a tremendous celebration as well.
Yeah, it was a really great showing overall. I mean, it has been very interesting to see how these schools have sort of adapted, as you said. And of course, Kamehameha not only did it right here on Oahu at the Kapalama campus, but also on Maui and on Hawaii Island. And what Kapalama did was very interesting. They sort of took these students on a journey of their schooling career. They started off by the elementary with a stop and kind of navigated through that campus. If you've been on the campus, of course, it's beautiful. And it was a winding path with various stops throughout the way before they all got recognized on their home field in that area there. And it was a lot of, it was a great way, I think, to celebrate and to really show the accomplishments. But again, we're seeing that throughout the state in these innovative ways in which schools are finding ways to celebrate their graduates. So congratulations again to the class of 2020 for all that they have gone through, and no doubt a big milestone for them as well. We also like to recognize a Hawaii hero, and of course today is Memorial Day, so we would like to recognize some very important members of our armed forces.
Yeah, that's right. We want to honor and recognize the men and women of the United States Armed Forces who have made the ultimate sacrifice. The annual in-person Memorial Day observances across the state have been canceled, but we do encourage you to share photos on social media to pay tribute to these brave men and women who have given us so much.
Yeah, great to, of course, see them. We should recognize them not only on, of course, Memorial Day, but really throughout. So we want to recognize our Hawaii hero of the day, but not only just today, but for all that they do to help protect and serve our country with this ultimate sacrifice. So again, a busy week ahead here. We have Scott Murakami coming on tomorrow, and we have Lieutenant Governor Josh Green also this week. We have a Ask the Doctor series that continues on Wednesday, and we'll be speaking with House Speaker Scott Saiki on Friday to talk a little bit more about the efforts that the legislature has just gone through to sort of help to fill the gap here with the budget shortfall and what can be expected when the legislature resumes session once again in June. So another full week here on the COVID-19 Care Conversation. We want to, of course, thank our partners, the Hawaii Executive Collaborative, as well as Hawaii Pacific Health, for making this conversation possible.
Thank you all for joining us today. If you are off today and enjoying Memorial Day, please stay safe out there, socially distance. I saw some pictures of the beach. It looks like a lot of people are jumping in the water. Remember to stay 6 feet apart from people outside of your household. Wear that mask and know that this is hopefully short term. The more that we comply, the quicker this will all be over. So until tomorrow, we wish you a fond aloha. And of course, we will see you right back here 10:30 tomorrow with Director Murakami.
Aloha. We'll see you then.